Everyone ignored the lost woman until a black boy took her hand. She was a CEO. The wind from Maplebrook cut through like shattered glass, stinging the gums with every breath. Streetlights flickered over an ice-caked sidewalk, snow trampled into a gray paste that clung to soles. Zane Carter, 17, hunched over a second-hand bike whose dry chain screamed like coal. His wool gloves were frayed. He'd learned that when you move the fast. Orders paid by the mile, not the hour. One more delivery meant one more dinner, one more envelope of cash, one more night with the door lock turned from the inside. His phone buzzed. Don't be late again. Last warning. Manager. Zane exhaled a ribbon of white vapor, muttering, one more run. One more night, and pedaled harder. At the corner of the old bus stop, a rusted metal sign clattered in the wind. Under a jaundiced lamp stood a young woman, arms wrapped tight in a thin wool coat scarf, askew hair, in a hurried bun, clutching a crumpled paper like rain-soaked instructions. She didn't stand like someone waiting, she stood like someone lost. Her eyes tracked each passing car, clinging to every pair of headlights as if one might become Bus 23. Nobody looked back. Everyone buried their faces in collars rushing home. Zane squeezed the brakes, one foot scraping on the ice for balance, eyes fixed on his watch, 7:41 p.m. Delivery due before 8. 10 minutes late meant no pay. One more strike meant a new lock. His stomach twisted. Keep going. Don't look. Don't stop. But his mother's voice from winters past whispered soft but stubborn, when you see someone that alone, you stop. Doesn't matter who they are. He bit his lip, pedaled 2 more rotations as if outrunning that voice. Then stopped. The image of cracked shoes soaked through the trembling paper, the shoulders folding against the wind, all of it jammed itself into his path. He turned the bike around, back wheel, squealing on the ice. When he got close enough, he lowered his voice so the cold wouldn't shatter it. Ma'am, are you okay out here? The woman flinched, slightly looked up. The light caught the dark circles under her eyes. Her voice rasped from the wind. Route 23, Willow End. I missed it. She glanced down the empty street as if expecting a mechanical miracle. Zane checked the watch, 7:46. Another notification blinked, then died. He didn't look. The cracks on her shoes said more melted snow had seeped through her toes, would soon burn with frostbite. Willow End's far, he said. In this weather, waiting is... He left the word, dangerous, hanging. He unwound his scarf, warmed it with his breath, then wrapped it gently around her neck, tucking the ends into her coat to block the wind. Sit on the rack, ma'am. I'll ride slow. She shook her head out of habit, the reflex of someone who's never asked for help. You don't have to. Someone will come. Zane looked down the road. No one. The roots had stopped long ago. Well, he said someone just did. He smiled, not a smile that warmed the street, but one that softened the decision. She nodded, climbed onto the back rack. The frame sagged. Zane braced his legs and pushed off. Hold tight. All right, she meant to say, you remind me of, but the wind swallowed the rest. The wheels rolled out of the lamplight and into a dark corridor where streetlights thinned like a pulse, fading. The delivery bag thumped against Zane's hip, counting debts with each swing. Last order, last paycheck, last bed. The clock pounded behind his temples. Yet somewhere inside a quiet voice answered, I'd still turn back. Behind him, her fingers gripped the rack's edge. Her breath slipped through his jacket, raising the air a degree warmer. They glided past shuttered windows of a nail salon, a bakery gone dark, a church with a tarnished cross standing guard, all dissolving into the town's nocturne. The wind hissed. The chain sang a strange duet. Is Maplebrook always this cold? She asked, between shivers. Don't know how it used to be, he said, but lately. The world's meaner. A sedan shot past Horn, blaring splashing black slush on them. "Sorry," Zane said reflexively, as if he could apologize for the road itself. "People have always been wild," she murmured, voice trembling but not breaking. Silence again, except for the obstinate tick of Zane's watch reminding him 8 o'clock was closing in. The skyline shrank as asphalt turned to cracked, patchy road. Oak Hill rose ahead, a long, stubborn climb. Zane drew a deep breath, shifted his weight, and pedaled harder. Every rotation was a coin dropped into the fund of lost jobs, but also one spent buying back his dignity. In the dark, that choice was heavy, but no longer the wrong kind of heavy. The wind turned into a head-on rival as the tires met Oak Hill. On both sides, trees bowed under snow-heavy branches that cracked like old bones. Streetlights thinned, leaving long stretches of darkness that forced muscle memory to replace sight. Zane kept a steady rhythm, refusing to let the black ice pull him off course. Behind him, the woman's hands gripped the bike rack, her chest brushing faintly against the back of his jacket, her warmth softer than any radiator he'd ever trusted. "How far now?" Zane asked, his breath burning his throat. "Willow End." "Near the hills," she murmured. "A house with a white gate ivy around the posts." Her voice wavered mid-sentence. She pressed a hand to her stomach, panting. "I think." My blood sugar dropped. "Phone's dead. I missed the bus, tried to call a ride, but the wind, so I waited by the stop. Felt less afraid there until she gave a self-deprecating laugh, thin but sincere. The kind of laugh belonging to someone used to running too fast for too long. Zane steered under the awning of an old gas station. The neon, open 24-hour sign had lost its S. The vending machine hummed feverishly like it had a mild fever. He dug through his pockets, gathering the last of his change, just enough for a cup of hot cocoa. The paper cup steamed, trembling. Zane placed it in her hands. She looked at it as if kindness had suddenly taken shape. Then she pushed it back to him. "You drink first. You need to pedal." Zane gave a shy grin, took a sip, and flinched as the heat scorched his tongue. She laughed, a real laugh that sounded like two keys clinking together. "See, that's youth for you." Zane handed it back. "And you're too old to stand alone at a bus stop." "Old at the right time," she replied, and they both laughed enough to thin the night by one shade. Back on the seat, Zane pedaled harder, knees buzzing the chain, jumping a tooth with a sharp click before locking back in place. The wind lashed his face like thin whips. "You remind me of someone," she said softly behind him, almost like a lullaby. "My grandmother. She used to warn me. Keep rushing like that and one day you'll get lost inside your own office." She fell quiet, as if hearing that old scolding again. Zane glanced at his faded wool gloves. "I talk to my mom, too. She doesn't always answer, but talking makes the silence smaller." Behind him, she nodded. He didn't need to see it to know. The road rippled with cracks, half buried in snow. Once, the front wheel hit a ridge and the bike swerved. Her hands clutched tight fingernails, pressing through the fabric of her gloves. Zane clenched his core, keeping balance. "Sorry, the road's old. It's okay," she said, then added quietly, "You pedal like my sister, stubborn in a beautiful way." Zane chuckled. The wind seemed to soften. Streetlights faded altogether, leaving only a thin coin of moonlight wedged between clouds. Faraway porch lights appeared and vanished behind them like notes in a nighttime score. In Zane's head, the clock kept pounding 8 Uru had passed. Part of him winced at the lost pay at the manager's future call. Another part exhaled the debt of his decision, already paid no refunds. "What's your name?" Zane asked as the hill began to ease. She paused. "Aria," she said, then, almost as an afterthought, Aria Layton. The name struck something in Zane's memory articles about startups. 30 under 30 lists interviews on growth and valuation. But the cold night didn't need that context. "I'm Zane," he said, as casually as if asking for directions. "Then, I'm very glad there's a Zane tonight," Arya replied. "I'm not glad you were stuck at that bus stop," he said, "but I'm glad nobody was left behind." Arya hummed a faint melody in response. Even the wind seemed to slow down to listen. The hill's peak came suddenly opening into a white basin. Far ahead, porch lights blinked like scattered fireflies. Zane relaxed his knees and let the bike glide downhill, the wind cutting sharper but feeling lighter inside his chest. At the base, a white gate appeared, paint-peeling ivy winding around the posts like a living promise. Zane braked the back wheel, skidding neatly to a stop. "We're here." Arya exhaled, her eyes lighting with the glow of recognition. When she stepped off her knees, faltered. Zane caught her elbow just as a motion sensor clicked, flooding the porch with a warm circle of light like an embrace. "I owe you," Arya said, her gaze locking with his in that suspended second shared by two people who'd just crossed darkness together. Zane shook his head. "No debts, just be safe." He dug into his pocket, tore a delivery receipt in half and scribbled on the back with a half-dry blue pen, "Zane Carter plus phone number." He placed it in her palm. "In case you ever get lost again." Footsteps echoed inside. The door lock turned. The door opened, spilling light and warmth onto the porch. Zane instinctively stepped back, hand on the bike seat, ready to leave once he knew she was safely inside the light. At that border between shadow and glow, Arya gently pressed the paper as if afraid it might crumble. "Thank you, Zane." He nodded, heart steady now, but still warm. Above them, the ivy trembled in the wind, signing perhaps a quiet contract. From this night on there would be roads, no one would have to walk alone. The latch turned. The door opened a crack, spilling warmth across the porch like a soft blanket. A middle-aged man in a robe stepped out, eyes freezing when he saw her. "Miss Layton, my God, where have you been?" The way he said her name made Zane pause. The woman, Arya, nodded slightly. "Went for a walk, or maybe a bike ride." The small joke was enough to bring tears to the man's eyes. He turned to Zane. "You brought her back?" "Yes, sir. Just wanted to make sure she got home safe." Zane pressed the torn receipt half into Arya's hand. "In case she gets lost again." The man opened the door wider. "Come inside, warm up first." Zane instinctively stepped back. "I should get going." Arya hesitated as if wanting to hold on to something. "Thank you, Zane." He nodded, pulled up his collar and set a foot on the pedal. Before he pushed off, he heard the man's voice drift from inside. "I'm Charles Avery. Let me make you some ginger tea." The door closed. The gold light on the porch shrank to a thin slice. Zane steered down the hill, wind slapping sideways like a whip, but in his chest lingered a small pocket of warmth from the look in Arya's eyes when she'd finally come home. Near his boarding house, the silence felt wrong. No leaking music from the floor above, no creak from the old sign swinging with each gust. He stopped at the steps. A cheap duffel, half buried in snow, waited there, a torn backpack strap poking out like a confession. Zane pulled off a glove, fit his key into the lock. Nothing. He twisted harder. The metal bit his palm. Still nothing. Then he noticed the crooked paper taped to the door. "Rent late." Lock changed. 4 words shorter than the night itself, but twice as cold. "Mr. Barnes," Zane knocked, fingers stinging instantly from the frost. "It's Zane. I just need a few more days." Inside, silence, like an abandoned house. A faint chair scrape maybe, but no answer. He knocked again, harder. Only snowflakes landed in his hair, melting into cold water down his neck. He looked at his bag, 2 pairs of jeans, his mother's photo, a frayed charger. They'd never looked like much until they were all he had left. His phone flashed 3%. The last text read, "Don't be late again." He typed fast. "Got stuck, emergency tonight, I'll make it up. please, don't fire me." It showed delivered, then the screen lit up with an incoming call, the manager's voice cut like ice. "What now? I met someone lost. It was freezing. If I didn't stop, you're paid to deliver, not to play hero. The client called me 3 times. I need this job. Will. Bring the uniform back next week. Final checks at the counter." Click. Black screen. Battery dead, a cruel blink. Zane stood frozen a few seconds, then sank onto the steps. The cold slid through denim, biting like fire ants. He laughed once, a dry, cracked sound that broke in his throat. The empty street threw it back at him, echoing like mockery. A door somewhere opened, a slice of gold appeared, then vanished. They're lucky, he thought. Step inside and it's warm, no begging. He didn't cry. The tears had run out back when threats of new locks were still only threats. Only his breath thickened into mist and drifted away. He rose, hoisted the bag. Quick calculation, the diner closed early now, the library too far, the bus station unsafe at night. What else? He thought of Brooks' convenience. Its neon often stayed on late. At least there'd be heat and people. He mounted the bike again, snow crusting his eyebrows like salt. The Brooks convenience sign buzzed hoarse and tired. A bell chimed as Zane pushed the door open. Inside smelled of old coffee and floor cleaner, but to him it felt like a harbor. Behind the counter stood Harold Brooks, 50s, broad-shouldered, kind-eyed. Beside him, Evan Cook, 30s hair, slicked back mouth curled into a flat, impatient line. Lost kid Evan asked disdain, barely disguised. "No, just cold," Zane murmured. "Could I tidy the shelves for a place to sit a while?" Harold glanced at Evan. "Relax, he's just a kid." Then to Zane's stack, the drink shelves near the cooler. "Don't block the aisle." "Yes, sir." Zane smiled. Nervously, dropped his bag, rolled up his sleeves. The next hour he stacked bottles, swept floors, emptied bins. The linoleum squeaked, the cooler hummed steadily. Warmth began to creep back into his numb fingers. Each time Evan passed, he shot Zane a look sharp enough to cut. Harold just counted the till, nodding occasionally, good enough. Close to midnight, the last customer left. Harold flipped the sign to closed and rolled the shutter halfway down, leaving a crack for air. "You can rest in the back for now," he said quietly. "Be up by 6 when we open." Zane wanted to say thank you a dozen times, but feared he might cry, so he only nodded, clutching his bag and retreating to a corner near the cardboard boxes. He had barely started to feel warm again when Evan stepped out from the back office, phone in hand, voice clipped Harold. "We're $20 short." Harold frowned. Busy night, probably miscounted. Evan snapped no. "I checked before the kid came in." His eyes locked on Zane like a hammer about to fall. I didn't take anything," Zane blurted, standing. "You can search me if you want." "Oh, I will," Evan said, taking a step closer. "You people always have excuses." "Enough," Harold said sharply, slamming a hand on the counter. "Nobody searches anyone. Check the cameras." Evan smirked and disappeared into the office. Through the small window, Zane saw him clicking, frowning, then emerging with a triumphant grin. "Footage from 11:30 to midnight's blacked out," he announced. Right when he was stocking the shelves. "Weird, huh?" Harold stiffened. "That system's brand new." Evan crossed his arms. "Yeah, well, coincidence." Zane's chest tightened. Words like police record trouble flashed through his head. He emptied his pockets, gloves, bike, key-frayed charger. "Look, I've got nothing." "Then get out before I call the cops," Evan growled. Evan, Harold said, voice suddenly low and solid as a locked door. "I said no." The silence that followed stretched like a fall. Zane stood between two breaths, fingers white around his bag strap. Then Harold walked into the office and shut the door with a heavy click. Evan leaned against the counter, that smug grin back on his face. The wall clock ticked slow each second, a drop of water in a torture cell. The door opened again. Harold emerged holding a small remote. "Funny thing, Evan," he said, voice calm in a way that cut deeper than anger. "I forgot to mention the cooler's got a backup camera." Evan froze. The smile cracked mid-air. Harold pressed play. On the screen behind the counter, the footage rolled clear as daylight. Right during the blackout, Evan appeared, opening the till, sliding a bill into his shirt pocket, and walking back to the office. Zane felt his heartbeat change tempo, like someone had straightened a noose into a line. Evan's mouth opened, but no sound came out. "Explain," Harold said, setting the remote down, his eyes never leaving Evan. I was just counting temporarily." "Don't. Pack your things. Come for your paperwork in the morning." Harold's voice was flat as ice. Anything crossing it would break. Evan's glare snapped toward Zane, venom spilling out. "You're firing me over this stupid kid?" "No," Harold said evenly. "I'm firing you because you lied." The words locked into place like bolts. The world fell silent, only the low hum of the fluorescent lights and the wind tapping the glass remained. Evan yanked his coat, kicked the door open. The bell clanged sharp and metallic, and then he vanished into the night like a streak of cold air. Zane stood frozen, his hands trembling, not from fear anymore, but from the rare, almost forgotten feeling of being believed. "You okay?" Harold asked. "Yes, sir. I didn't mean to cause trouble. The trouble was him. You're just cold." Harold smiled gently, eyes creasing at the corners. He went to the storage room and pulled out a folding cot, a worn beige blanket frayed at the edges. "Sleep here tonight. Lock the door from the inside. I'll make coffee in the morning." Zane nodded quickly, afraid that if he spoke his throat would crack. The storage room smelled of cardboard and faint orange oil from an old air freshener. He lay on his side, blanket pulled to his chin, feeling for the first time that night his spine relax untouched by wind. "Thank you," he whispered, not sure if it was to Harold, the backup camera, or his mother. And he slept a deep round sleep where the wind outside seemed to drift off into another world. Very early, when the sky was only gray at the edges, Zane woke to the low hum of an engine. He folded the blanket neatly and stepped out. Harold was brewing coffee. Through the glass door waited a black sedan, headlights faint in the mist. The bell jingled. The man from the night before stepped in, Charles Avery tie straight as a ruler. He looked around, eyes landing on Zane, and smiled softly. "Good morning, Zane. Good morning," Sir Zane replied, fixing his collar. "I work for Miss Harriet Layton," Charles said, reaching into his coat pocket and pulling out something familiar, the crumpled half of a delivery receipt inked in slanted blue. "She kept this all night," he said. "This morning she told me, 'Find him.' I called the number, but it didn't go through, so I asked around town." Harold chuckled. "Maplebrook's small, 2 loops and you'll hit the right person." Zane flushed. "Is she okay? She's fine. Last night her blood sugar dropped and her phone died, but she's warm now, and she wants to thank you in person." Charles turned to Harold. "Mind if I borrow Zane for the morning?" "Go ahead. Leave your things here," Harold said, handing Zane a paper-wrapped muffin. "Eat up, keep warm." The car glided through the same streets Zane had pedaled the night before. From inside, they looked a small miniature. Charles didn't talk to fill space, he spoke to steady it. "She said, 'You gave her your scarf, rode her up Oak Hill. At her age, exhaustion and loneliness are more dangerous than wind. I just didn't want to leave anyone behind," Zane said, feeling warmth return to his palms at the memory of the shared cocoa. The white gate with its ivy appeared again, this time under morning light. The door opened before they could ring. Arya Layton stood there, hair neatly tied, cream sweater a spark in her eyes. In daylight, Zane recognized her not just as the woman he helped, but as the face from articles he'd once glimpsed at the newsstand. Young CEO Layton Labs, Closes Series C30 under 30. He hesitated, caught between his world and hers. "Come in," Zane. Arya said, her tone both formal and warm. The living room smelled of polished wood and coffee. The fireplace crackled. On a side table lay the torn receipt, neatly placed like a keepsake. Arya sat across from him, direct. "Last night you helped someone without knowing who she was. You lost your job, your place to sleep for doing the right thing. I know about all of it." Charles shifted slightly. Clearly, she'd already called Harold. "I don't need anything," Zane said quietly. "I do," Arya corrected with a small angled smile. "I need to repay you properly through investment, not charity. I have space here, and I need hands at my office. Stay a while. You'll be paid. Learn what you need, bookkeeping, operations. I don't believe in charity. I believe in investing in dignity." Zane looked up, confused and lighter all at once. "And if I end up being a burden?" "Then we adjust," Arya said, shrugging. "That's what a CEO does." She leaned forward slightly. "I'm building something called Maple Light, a small fund at first, scholarships for kids to get back to school, job skills, training, safe housing for those who slip through the cracks like you did. You know where the pain points are. You can help me set up the right processes." The word processes made Zane think of the backup camera, the ledgers, the order forms, things he'd never held but now believed could save people from lies. "Can I learn all that?" "You will," Arya said. "Charles will handle legal. You and I will handle the heart and backbone." She extended her hand. "Deal. No obligations except kindness and honesty." Zane looked at that hand, not soft but strong, the hand of someone who'd run too fast and finally learned when to stop. He placed his hand over hers. The warmth touched a part of his chest that had cracked open the night before. "All right," he said. "Deal." "Perfect," Arya said, turning to Charles. "The garden room, please," then to Zane. "Take the day to rest. This afternoon, Charles will show you the library and the greenhouse. Tomorrow, we write the first rule of transparency." "What rule is that?" Zane asked. "No random aid. Everything must have records and accountability. And no one gets left behind, but no one gets to exploit kindness either." She smiled. "Sound familiar?" "Very," Zane said, remembering his words at the bus stop. "No one left behind." Charles led him down a bright hallway lined with framed photos, some newspaper clippings of Arya's company, some of a little girl with braids laughing beside her grandmother. The garden room had wide windows overlooking a frost-touched greenhouse. On the bed lay fresh white sheets and a small embroidered towel placed at the foot as if someone had just set it there. "She left that herself," Charles said softly, almost afraid to disturb the care behind the gesture. "Miss Layton rarely does small things unless she really wants someone to feel welcome." Zane stood still, letting a different kind of silence fill the room, one that was full, not empty. He set his backpack down, brushed a hand over the cold window frame, and watched the ivy by the gate sway in the wind. Inside, his mind scenes replayed like film in fast motion: the torn receipt, the cup of cocoa, the backup camera, the thin blanket, the black car. All of them linked by one thread: don't leave anyone behind, including yourself. Somewhere in the house a clock chimed softly. In the next room, Arya and Charles were already planning tomorrow. Emails, meetings, workflow drafts. Zane sat on the bed for the first time after a long night and exhaled a round, full breath. He didn't know which direction his life would bend next, but he knew this morning the night had finally given him an answer. Some doors open only when you turn back at the right moment. That noon, rare sunlight spilled through the long windows, tracing warm stripes across the wooden floor. Charles Avery led Zane on an orientation tour. The living room smelled of beeswax and cedar. The hallway was lined with photo frames. The library overflowed with books and old case files. And at the far end of the garden stood a lemon greenhouse, its glass roof misted with dew. "Miss Layton still starts every morning here," Charles said, touching the glass handle gently. The scent of damp soil and lemon leaves hit Zane like a soft sigh of relief. Inside stood Aria Layton, cardigan in cream, a folder tucked under her arm. "Let's begin," Aria said, direct but warm. Principle number 1 of Maple Light. No random aid. Every grant must have documentation criteria and checkpoints. Principle number 2. No one left behind, but no one allowed to exploit kindness. She slid the folder toward Zane. "Help me turn that into a process." In the library, fine dust floated like tea steam. Zane sat at a wooden desk, opening the old laptop Aria had lent him. He created folders: 01 intake, 02 assessment, 03 YOS approval, 04 disbursement, 05 follow-up, 06 YOS audit. Under intake, he drafted a registration form with mandatory fields: date of birth, housing status, education, reference contacts. Across from him, Aria wrote in a fountain pen notebook, occasionally glancing up. "Add a section for risks, substance abuse, violence, and a safety plan," she said. Zane typed. Then an ethics pledge for recipients, truthful information funds used as stated consent to follow-up monitoring. Zane added a checkbox: "I agree." For assessment, they agreed on a 3-step process. 1. Interview, at least 20 minutes recorded or transcribed. 2. Verification call, 1 or 2 references, cross-check documents. 3. Need scoring, housing, safety, livelihood, education. Aria suggested create a 0-5 scale with clear examples. 5. Homeless. Tonight. 4. Temporary shelter. That way, new staff won't rely on guesswork. Zane built the table, each cell clicking neatly into place, like bones aligning in something he'd long needed structure. For approval. Under $500 caseworker plus 1 manager. $502,000 requires Aria or Charles. Above $2,000 must go to a 3-person review board via video call, so no one carries responsibility alone, Aria emphasized. Zane nodded. He knew too well how easy it was to be blamed when standing alone. For disbursement, Aria said, avoid direct cash if possible. Prefer vouchers or pay schools, motels, suppliers directly. If cash is unavoidable, get handwritten receipts and photo proof. Zane added a chain of custody table: who received, who held, who delivered, time, place, signature. He thought of Harold's backup camera justice that left a trace. Follow-up at 30, 60, and 90 days, call or visit, fill a checklist. Still safe, progress in school or work, need further help. If unreachable twice in a row, close the file, record the reason. Not endless, Aria said, but always leave a way back. Audit, Zane proposed a public transparency dashboard displaying total funds received, disbursed number of beneficiaries, completion rate, anonymized stories, and monthly charts. Aria smiled. Good. Add an anonymous whistleblower channel. Promise a 72-hour SLA for response and 0 retaliation. Charles appeared at the doorway, nodding. Legally, I'll draft a conflict of interest policy. Any staff with family receiving aid must recuse themselves. That afternoon, Harold Brooks arrived with a paper bag of sandwiches and 2 bottles of water. For the Goodness startup team, he joked. Aria invited him to sit, asking about the town's network. You'll need MOUs with Lewis's gas station, and the Pine Motel kids crash there sometimes, Harold said. Aria turned to Charles. Draft a standard MOU payment terms liability limited data sharing. Zane watched Harold with quiet gratitude. Last night, he'd been the wall between him and humiliation. Today, he was the first brick in their foundation. By sunset, they visited the lemon greenhouse. Arya touched a leaf. The oil scent lifted calm into the air. Back in Series A, she said, "I worked 16-hour days and drank coffee like water. My grandmother always warned, don't let the world swallow your heart. Last night it nearly did. Thank you for pulling me back." Zane fumbled. "I just did what my mom taught me. When you see someone alone, stop." Arya nodded. "Let's write that on the center wall. Don't leave them behind." Before resting, Zane received a temporary access badge, a safety manual, and tomorrow's schedule. Set up transparency dashboard. Arya plus Zane plus Charles Legal plus Harold Community Advisor. Back in his room, he looked through the window at the white gate and the swaying ivy. On his desk sat the plastic-sealed receipt framed by Arya like a reminder. He brushed his fingers over the frame, the warmth rising through his palm. He thought of the small paycheck he'd earned, the white sheets, the locked door. Everything felt so new it was almost frightening. But he told himself, mistakes are fixed with process. Fear is faced with company. That night, Zane slept dreamlessly. Tomorrow he'd start building dashboards, whistleblower forms, conflict of interest policies, MOUs, words that sounded dry, yet had become the pillars of something profoundly human. Don't leave anyone behind, including yourself. The first news came like specks of rain tapping against glass. A small blog posted a photo of Zane helping Arya outside a supermarket captioned, "Kind boy helps young CEO." The first comment read, "Wish everyone was like him." The second, "How convenient, close to a CEO." The third, "Too perfect to be true." Zane stared anxiously at his phone. Arya just shrugged. "It's normal. Let's work." They went back to drafting policies and building the prototype dashboard. The next afternoon, Evan Cook appeared on a local gossip page in a video shot from his car dashboard lights, slicing his face into shadows. The whole town's obsessed with this kind delivery boy story, Evan sneered. "I know that kid. Worked at the store. Slick, dishonest." And Arya Layton. "You people really believe a young CEO let a random street kid into her house out of kindness?" The clip spread like wildfire. Another anonymous account added, "He got fired for skipping his shift." Don't trust him. The lies were twisted just enough to stick. Charles advised, "Let's issue a short statement. Confirm Arya's safety. Thank the community, no personal comments." Arya nodded. "Do it. And not as the victim. Speak about principles." The statement went out simple, not dramatic, but the muddy water didn't clear. That night, Zane stayed awake, heart coiling like a bike chain about to slip its gear. He kept touching the framed half-receipt on his desk like a charm. A text buzzed from Arya. "Don't respond with anger. See me in the morning." The next day, Harold Brooks walked into the center with a USB stick in hand. "Thought you might need this." He plugged it into the laptop backup footage from that night, Evan opening the till, pocketing a bill, walking into the back room. "I'm not letting anyone smear you," Harold said firmly. "Where do we post it so the truth travels fastest?" Arya asked. On the Foundation's page, Charles replied, "No spin, just truth matters. See for yourself." They blurred customer faces, kept timestamps intact. The post went live. Some have questioned the story behind Maple Light. We believe truth speaks for itself. Here is footage from the night in question at Brooks' convenience. The person spreading false claims is lying about that night. Under it, Harold commented from his personal account, "I'm the store owner." The man in yesterday's video was fired for stealing that night. Like groundwater finding an outlet, the tide of comments turned "I remember that delivery kid. Always, yes sir, yes ma'am, always on time. I saw him that night giving a woman a ride up Oak Hill." Honest people don't film themselves in cars at midnight to twist stories. A small newsroom reached out for an interview. Aria agreed on one condition. They read Maple Light's case files, saw the draft dashboard, and understood the process. The article's title, "Kindness Under Fire, Goodness at the Barrel of Doubt." It quoted Harold Charles and a short line from Aria. "A week ago, a boy asked for nothing but this, that I be safe. Maple Light isn't a fairy tale, it's a contract. Society invests in young people when they've earned it. The rest is up to transparency and time." When Zane read it, his chest swelled with something strange, light but taut. He wasn't called a hero or turned into a poster. He was placed exactly where he belonged, the person who started a healthy process. That evening, he and Aria stuck the new motto to the center wall, "Don't leave them behind." The adhesive wouldn't hold on the damp plaster. Zane laughed. Transparency's like that too. It sticks only after a few layers. 3 days later, the public dashboard went live. Week 1. Funding $5 to $200. Disbursed 1-800 motel vouchers. GED tuition bus passes. Applications received 12. Under review 7. Completed. Whistleblower reports 0. SLA 72. Clean layout, easy charts. At the bottom, they wrote, "If you doubt, ask. If you believe, volunteer. If you need help, knock." Meanwhile, Evan posted a long rant edited fake. But the public had seen the footage. The steady timestamps crushed his claim. His account quickly closed comments and then went silent. Aria didn't open champagne. She simply led Zane to the lemon greenhouse. "This isn't a victory," she said. "It's just the system working. We didn't beat anyone, we made space for truth." Zane nodded. "And for the ones who need help." That evening, Maple Light hosted its first open house, 6 to 9 p.m. Harold manned the cookie table. Charles explained policies. Aria gave tours of the counseling rooms. Zane sat at the intake desk under a handwritten sign, "Application Intake." A girl with frizzy curls, Jayla, approached, clutching her backpack. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. "I lost my place 2 nights ago." Zane pulled out a chair. "Sit down. Let's start with your name." From across the room, Aria watched, exhaling softly. All the online noise shrank beside one trembling girl on a plastic chair. Shibata. 2 weeks later, Maple Light's January report read, 23 applications received, 11 dispersed, WO misuse incidents. 1. Anonymous whistleblower note, caseworker too close to recipient. Resolved in 48 hours. Reassignment logged. Zane finalized the report. Aria reviewed it. Good. Next month, add a 5-question satisfaction survey. Charles added the line "public file available at." They clicked publish. When Aria locked her office that night, the wind outside had softened. The ivy brushed lightly against the new sign, Maple Light Community Center. Zane's shadow stretched across the brick floor, his hand resting on the words, "Don't leave anyone behind." Inside the filing cabinets held procedures forms, MOUs, dashboards, things not poetic in themselves, but things that protected what was human kindness. The first storm had passed, though the sky wasn't entirely clear. Somewhere else in town, someone was already scripting a new, louder, murkier story. But for now, the lights in the center stayed on and the doors stayed open. Zane lingered 10 minutes longer, reviewing Jayla's new file. He ticked the box marked "Follow-up in 30 days", then closed his laptop. As he stood, he heard it clearly, like a quiet oath in his own voice. Tomorrow, if the storm comes again, we'll have a system to open the door the right way. Monday morning, Charles Avery walked in holding a folded newspaper. On the front page, a photo of Evan Cook surrounded by microphones, headline in bold, "Former employee alleges Maple Light is a front." Below it, the quote that young CEOs being manipulated by the delivery boy. "I have documents showing where the money really goes, no one's checking." Zane sat upright, fingers gripping the edge of the table until his knuckles went white. Aria Layton said nothing at first. She pulled up a chair, set the paper flat, and looked around the team. Deep breath. Read carefully. Don't react. After reading, they saw the twin attacks. 1. Maple Light's finances are shady. 2. The relationship between Aria and Zane is inappropriate. The center's phone rang non-stop. A few donors froze their pledges. 2 volunteers took a break until things clear up and the inbox filled with anonymous emails. Girl boss and boy toy sounds familiar. Zane's body went rigid. Those words were mud, thick, dirty, and hard to wash off. Aria met his eyes. This isn't about your worth, it's about how we respond. Within an hour, they built an emergency plan in a dense, focused meeting. Aria wrote in thick black marker on the glass board, 1. Freeze all disbursements over $500 for 72 hours. For review, urgent cases shifted to vouchers. 2. Hire an independent audit firm to review the first 30 days contract to be signed immediately. 3. Open a public data room, anonymized bank statements, receipts, vouchers, approval logs, all with timestamps. 4. Prepare a crisis Q&A for staff with one message. We'll let facts speak. Respect questions. No personal attacks. 5. Hold a community town hall. Thursday evening, listen, answer, show the dashboard and the policies. Charles started typing at lightning speed, calling Morrison and Hale Audit. By the door, Harold Brooks crossed his arms. I'm speaking at the Main Street Business Guild tonight. They know me, they'll listen. Don't stay silent. Aria nodded. Just don't shout. Harold grinned. I'll bring the USB again for anyone who forgot. Zane drafted a 2-page summary of the Maple Light process. Intake, assessment, approval, disbursement, follow-up, audit, each step with a short example. He added a flowchart showing approval thresholds, neat arrows like a periodic table of trust. In the internal chat, Aria messaged highlight the whistleblower portal and the 72-hour response guarantee. Zane pinned a red star at the top corner of the site, titling it, Anonymous Report, We're Listening. By noon, local channel KMB7 called, We'd like a live interview tonight. Charles cautioned Aria no combative setup. We agree only if you can show the actual process, not just answer yes or no questions. Aria agreed on the condition they display the dashboard and data room on screen. The station accepted. Viewers love visuals. That afternoon, the county office sent a polite inquiry. 2 donors replied, We'll wait for the audit. Inside the center, the air was tight as a guitar string. Jayla, the curly-haired girl with the new file, lingered at the intake door. Zane motioned her in. I'm not sure. It's the right time, she said timidly. It's exactly the right time, Zane said, pulling out a chair. Your case will go through for motel vouchers and bus passes. Tuition will pause 72 hours until audit clearance. Ms. Layton's signed it herself. Jayla bit her lip, nodded. A real person, one snapped Zane back to center. That evening, the KMB7 studio felt like a walk-in freezer. The host opened sharply. Ms. Layton, were you manipulated by the kind delivery boy? Aria didn't blink. I was manipulated by a good process, she said calmly. Here's the 6-step system. Here's our public dashboard, and here's the data room with anonymized statements. Ask from within these. The host pressed. Some say you're hiding things. Area. We hide recipient names for protection, but every dollar trail is open. Here, $1 $200 on January 12th, Pine Motel vouchers, 320 Metrolink bus passes, 280 GED Center tuition. Receipts attached. When the host turned to Zane, his palms were damp, but his voice steady. The first night we closed at 9 p.m., but the door in my head stayed open. I didn't manipulate anyone. I just rode my bike and brought someone back into the light. Arya's faint smile told him, "You're okay." Back at the center, their inbox overflowed. "I still disagree, but I respect how you opened the books. I used to doubt, now I want to volunteer. Thank you for keeping my daughter's name anonymous." The dirty rain still fell, but now their roof was made of data. That night, Arya sat in the lemon greenhouse fingertips, tracing the edge of a leaf citrus oil, easing the tension in her nerves. Across from her, Zane's eyes were red from fatigue. "Tired?" she asked. "Tired, but solid," he said. Arya nodded. "Tomorrow Morrison and Hale start the audit. You'll go with them. I'll meet the county board and donors. Tomorrow evening, town hall. We don't fear questions." Zane looked out toward the white gate, the ivy trembling slightly in the wind. He slipped a hand into his pocket, touching the laminated half-receipt, the small talisman from their first night. The storm was raging outside, but inside the backbone was built. And by morning, they would walk into the storm carrying something the storm didn't have: discipline. The Morrison and Hale audit team arrived precisely at 8 Suru. 2 auditors' badges on their lapels opened a checklist: bank statements, read-only, access credentials, invoice cross-checks, and a full chain of custody review for every cash transaction. Zane sat beside them, laptop open to Google Drive folders labeled WO106, each with timestamps and editor names. "Good filing," the female auditor said, nodding. "But add a website access log and checksum for the public report so no one can claim you edited after publication." Charles agreed instantly. "Done. We'll use SHA-256 hash for the public PDFs." Zane grinned. "Sounds like armor." By noon, they had cross-verified 12 files, the Pine Motel vouchers matched total invoices, Metrolink confirmed 30-day bus passes, and 2 small cash payments had both signed receipts and photo proof. The auditors wrote in their notes, "No discrepancies detected. Procedures align with stated policy." They requested one more day to finalize their report. Arya said simply, "We'll wait," then turned to Zane. Time to prep the town hall. The town hall opened 30 minutes early. Plastic chairs filled the community hall. A large screen projected the live dashboard behind the stage. Harold manned the cookie table like a warm beacon. Charles greeted each guest at the door. When Arya stepped up, murmurs rippled through the crowd. She didn't open with a speech. She pointed straight at the numbers. Week 1-2. $5 $200 received, $800 disbursed. Week 3, $7 $400 received, $3 $900 disbursed. Currently, all disbursements over $500 are frozen pending audit. Tomorrow, the independent report goes public. A man raised his hand. "I don't trust CEOs. You sound good." Arya nodded. "Fair. Check the statements yourself and call Morrison and Hale directly. Here's their signed contract." A woman asked, "What about that boy?" Zane stepped forward, heart pounding against his ribs, but voice steady. "I'm not a symbol. I'm the person filling forms when someone needs housing. If tomorrow I make a mistake, the policy corrects me. If anyone doubts, the whistleblower line's open." A man in a knit cap squinted. "Nice story. What did you get that night?" Zane smiled. "Warm." The room softened. Even the scrape of chairs sounded like an exhale. By the end, several former volunteers signed back up for shifts. A small donor renewed her monthly pledge. Arya didn't make a victory speech. She just shook hands, eyes firm. We move forward. Next morning, the audit report went live on Maple Light's homepage. During the reviewed period dates, XY Maple Light maintained complete documentation. No financial irregularities found. Recommendations publicly hash reports. Archive full web access logs. Below were links to the data room FAQ and whistleblower portal. Public comments shifted fast. Didn't like Aria, but sorry for judging too soon. This level of transparency deserves support. Where's the volunteer link? Evan Cook still wouldn't stop. He posted screenshots of supposed internal documents with red circles and arrows. Charles replied within 10 minutes. Fabricated file not in the edit log. Checksum mismatch. Metadata shows creation today. Aria didn't add a single insult. She simply pinned the technical evidence directly beneath Evan's exposé. People were used to watching drama. This time, they watched checksums. That afternoon, a letter arrived from the Governor's Office Community Leadership Week. Please share your transparency model. Aria looked at Zane. You'll be the one speaking? Me, Zane blinked. Yes. They already know how I talk. They need to hear you. The City Hall auditorium was vast and echoing rows of old polished wooden benches. When the announcer said Zane Carter, he swallowed dryly and stepped forward. He'd never imagined standing on a stage not to defend himself. He glanced down Harold in the third row, Charles in the second area, giving that same small nod she'd given the night she'd said, "Ride the bike." "My name's Zane," he began. "I came here on a very cold night the night I turned back at a bus stop. I'm not smart or special. I was just raised to stop when I see someone alone. The rest is process. Process keeps us decent longer than one good night. Process turns kindness into a social contract. If someone falls through the net, they're pulled back up, but no one gets to pull for profit. Last week, people called me all kinds of names. I can't stop them. I can only open the books and the door." He paused, eyes lifting into the amber light. "I want to say to those who misjudged or spoke harshly, I forgive you, because hate doesn't need a crowd, it only needs silence. And I choose not to stay silent. I choose to answer with facts and with opportunity." Heads nodded in the front row. Applause started soft, then grew until the whole hall stood. Zane felt his heartbeat settle, grounding itself again. Back at the center, Aria didn't hug him. She gave him a crisp high five and pointed to the wall sign. "Don't leave anyone behind. Add the small dorm project to next quarter's plan," she said. 3 beds, night supervision, strict rules. Zane grinned. "Already have a draft." That evening, before lights out, Zane walked to the white gate. The ivy rustled softly like paper in the wind. He took out the laminated receipt, the one with Zane Carter scrawled in crooked blue ink. Once it had tied together a single chance encounter. Now it was the seed of a system that no storm could bend. He slipped it back into his pocket, adjusted his scarf neatly, and went inside. The dashboard glowed softly on the screen. The data room was open. The whistleblower link waited for a hesitant click, and Jayla, along with a few others, was filling out forms under warm yellow light, their handwriting shaky but clear. The second storm couldn't defeat what it didn't understand, the discipline of kindness. As for Zane, he left City Hall that day with a few business cards in his pocket, handshakes that didn't promise too much, and one quiet enduring truth: his voice alone was enough to keep the door open. After the storm on television, Maple Light entered what seemed like calm days. The dashboard ran smoothly. The data room stayed open around the clock, and the whistleblower line remained pinned at the top right corner of the website. Zane moved from the intake desk to operations, building staff schedules, drafting SOPs for each shift, and training new employees on how to log entries properly. Aria divided her days in half mornings at Layton Labs, afternoons at Maple Light. At night, if she still had energy, she stopped by the lemon greenhouse to breathe in the scent of leaves before heading home. At Maple Light Center Facility 1, a new cloth banner hung across the entrance. Jung Bo Ai Lei, don't leave them behind. Below it, 3 framed posters. 6-step process code of conduct and rights of beneficiaries. Every Friday, Harold Brooks brought cookies, joking a little sugar before the weekend helps the heart. Charles Avery sat quietly in the back of meetings, nodding over reports. We're on the right path. Then the first whistleblower alert rang. An anonymous message, caseworker named Theo, suggested a $40 finder's fee to speed up my application. Zane froze. Aria simply said, activate the process. Within 24 hours, Charles removed Theo from all active cases and reassigned his clients. Zane pulled the logs. One late-night access to the approval form stood out. Not much, but enough to raise flags. They called Morrison and Hale for a quick 2-week audit of Theo's files. At the same time, Aria created a public progress tracker for the case Day 1 complaint, received Day 2, temporary suspension Day 3-4, audit Day 5, conclusion Day 6, public disclosure and remediation. Harold patted Zane's shoulder. Don't let the last storm make you deaf. Listening is strength. On Day 4, the audit results came back 3 private messages offering to expedite cases and 1 undocumented cash handoff. No major loss, but enough to break trust. Aria invited Theo for a recorded meeting. He stammered, misspoke, hard times, just joking. Aria shook her head. Maple Light doesn't punish poverty, but it punishes those who exploit it. Result termination of contract anonymized public notice and post-mortem Sherba 1 posted online, including a clear timeline, blind spots, and lessons learned. Dual verification for vouchers over $200. No private contact rule outside official channels. Refresher training on conflicts of interest. The post-mortem number 01 was brief, blunt, factual. Comments flooded in. You messed up, you fixed it. Respect. I trust how they handle mistakes. Firm, but fair. Evan Cook tried to stir things again. See told you. But this time no one joined in because facts had replaced fights. While the Theo incident was still under review, Jayla, the curly-haired girl, went missing for 48 hours. Zane marked a yellow alert running call routes, hotline references, outreach teams. On the second night, her number lit up. Her voice was tired. I slipped. Stayed at my old apartment. They invited me to try again. I left, but I'm ashamed. Zane lowered his voice until it was barely a whisper. It's okay, come back. The process has a re-entry corridor. Jayla arrived eyes swollen from lack of sleep. Aria didn't ask why she asked, what's today's safety plan? Zane reopened her file, updated risk score, changed references, froze old spending cards and issued a 3-night voucher at Pine Motel, plus a new bus pass. No judgment, Aria told the team, but build fences. Jayla signed, hands trembling, and said quietly, thank you for not locking the door. Zane smiled. The door's open, just screened. Good news crept in between crises. At Layton Labs, Aria's tech company was entering a new funding round. A major fund offered investment, but only if she either left Maple Light or accepted a lower valuation, citing priority conflict. Aria looked them straight in the eye. No, I won't abandon Maple Light. If you want clarity, I'll establish a trust endowment, independent board, separate governance. Day-to-day leadership won't be me. Charles called it the clean cut of doubt. A week later, Maple Light Endowment was born. $1.5 million from Aria's personal funds. Matching commitments from 3 local companies. The board included Charles Legal, Harold Community, an independent accountant, a high school teacher, area, non-voting seat for disbursement decisions, and the interim executive director, Zane Carter. "Am I ready?" Zane asked, torn between pride and fear. "No one's ready before they start," Arya replied. "The process will hold you up, and the team will too." Charles handed him the job outline: budget, staffing, internal controls, community relations. "I'll walk beside you for 3 months," he said. "Then I'll step half a pace back." Harold added, "If you hit a wall, call me. I'll bring cookie sugar, keeps the brain running." Zane received the sub-account card spending authority under $500 and a stack of papers that felt heavier than they looked responsibility. That night in the lemon greenhouse, Arya handed him a wax-sealed envelope labeled "If Arya is absent for an extended period." She smirked at his startled look. "Don't make it dramatic, it's governance. If I'm away for the DC summit or something unexpected, open it. It details succession, temporary authority, and rules you cannot break." Zane held the envelope and heard the faint rustle of paper, like a promise. A message arrived from the state office, an invitation for Arya to speak at the state senate on digital transparency for community organizations. Her schedule filled fast. Maple Light grew less dependent on her, exactly as she intended. Jayla passed her GED exam and rolled a suitcase through the center, beaming. "I got into a nursing program." Zane stood by the "Don't leave anyone behind" sign and thought of that first night at the bus stop: a wool scarf, a shared sip of cocoa, a white gate wrapped in ivy. Amid spreadsheets, checksums, and MOUs, he realized the elastic thread holding it all together was still the same line his mother taught him: "When you see someone alone, stop." One late evening, Evan Cook lingered outside the center, phone recording in hand. The porch camera caught everything. Charles didn't tell anyone to chase him off. He called the police by the book and submitted the footage through official channels. No shouting, no confrontation. The next morning, Evan posted, "I'm being followed." Maple Light pinned the security footage timestamps and police receipt right below his post. No insults, no commentary. People were tired of noise. Data spoke louder. A month later, Facility 2 opened across the river in Riverview. The dashboard gained a new tab by center. The map's yellow dots stretched from Main Street to the opposite shore. At the quarter-end budget meeting, Charles poured tea. Harold brought almond cookies. Arya pulled up a chair, and Zane spread the papers. No one said we've won. They talked about SOP 7 Night Dorm 3, Beds on Call Supervision, SOP 08 Handling Media Pressure, SOP 9 Reemployment for those who relapsed. Afterward, Arya brushed her hand against a lemon leaf and spoke as if telling a secret. "The day my company was valued, I felt more empty than full. The day Maple Light posted postmortem Narjuan, I felt full. Maybe wealth is knowing where to give it." Zane smiled. "At the center, we call that investing in dignity." Arya nodded. "Exactly. And you, Zane, are my COO of dignity." Year 3. Maple Light opened its third facility in Harrison Park. The public dashboard now featured regional graphs, and every quarterly report came with a hash code printed at the bottom for integrity. Zane Carter moved from interim to official executive director. Charles Avery stepped back into an advisory role, occasionally polishing a sentence in policy drafts. Harold Brooks passed his store to his son and spent more days at the center. The same old USB that once held the truth now hung behind the reception desk like a lucky charm. Arya Layton accepted a seat on the State Council for Social Transparency. At Layton Labs, she shifted from CEO to founding chair, carving out more time for public policy and the Maple Light Endowment. There were small flares of noise that rose and faded. A blog accused Maple Light of idolizing individuals. Arya responded with decentralization, adding more community representatives to the board and requiring major decisions to go through a vote. An anonymous account mocked Zane for milking an old story, but he said nothing, only shared that Jayla was now in her second year of nursing school, still checking in every 90 days. The world tried to rattle their door, but inside, the screen door held firm. Year 5. Jayla graduated. She came back to the center in a blue gown, hugging Zane and Arya with teary eyes. "If there hadn't been that re-entry corridor, I'd still be lost," she said. Zane teased. "Can I borrow that line for a poster?" Arya nodded, at a small footnote, "There's still a screen door." All three laughed. The 10-year anniversary of Maple Light took place on an early autumn afternoon. Paper lanterns swayed across the courtyard of Facility 1. Wooden tables formed a U, and the old banner, "Don't leave anyone behind," had been cleaned, but still kept the uneven paint marks from the very first night it was hung. The governor's office sent a delegate to present a plaque for Outstanding Community Transparency Model. The mayor of Maple Brook shook Arya's hand. "This city owes you a thank you," Arya corrected gently. "Not me, us." Zane spoke first. He kept it short, the way their media team had rehearsed 10 years ago. "I turned back at a bus stop. I didn't know who I was helping, only that I couldn't leave someone behind. Today, we don't carry people on bike racks anymore. We carry them through process intake, assessment, approval, disbursement, follow-up, audit. It doesn't look romantic, but that's how kindness resists erosion by doubt." Applause spread steady, warm, not loud. Then Arya stepped up, framed by lantern light hair tied back, hand resting on the wooden podium. Her voice was still as clear as the day she'd faced KMB7, but now it carried the weight of calm after storms. "Back then, the press asked me, 'Were you manipulated by a teenage boy?' The truthful answer is yes. I was manipulated by what's right. By a wool scarf wrapped without asking a name, by a shared sip of cocoa, by a decision to turn back in the dark. I used to think success meant raising good capital. Now, I think it means raising the right people at the right time." The applause thickened. Harold whistled low. Charles wiped his eyes and muttered, "Dust." After the ceremony, guests walked through a hallway of photos. The first dashboard, post-mortem, Gasazuo 1, the year. 2 charts, ribbon cuttings at Facilities 2 and 3, and portraits of those who had come and stayed, Jayla in her nursing coat. A young electrician apprentice, a single mother, now running her own tailoring shop. At the very end of the hall sat a small backlit frame, a laminated half-receipt, Zane Carter plus phone number written in slanted blue ink. Below it, a small caption read, "Bus stop, choice, Maple Light." Visitors lingered longest there. As the afternoon light slanted, golden Arya called Zane to the lemon greenhouse. Leaves shimmered in syrupy sun. The air smelled sharp and sweet. She handed him a new envelope, unsealed this time, labeled simply Archive 10-Year Vision. Inside was a blueprint for Generation 2. 8-bed dorm, yes, 2 night shifts, vocational scholarships by local demand. Open Data API for social researchers. Policy sandbox to test community-based rental vouchers. "I won't be here every day anymore," Arya said, eyes drifting toward the white gate. "I'll be traveling more to the county, the state, maybe DC. But the light here keep it burning." Zane gripped the envelope, the same warmth swelling in his chest as that first night he'd pedaled her up the hill. "I'll keep it," he said. "I'll keep the light." Arya smiled softly. "My grandmother used to say, 'Don't let the world swallow your heart.' You helped me keep mine, Zane, so keep yours too." "I will," he said, eyes on the ivy outside the window. "And when I'm tired, I'll lean on the process." Charles entered, holding a cup of tea. "You two done yet?" The group photos waiting. He handed Zane a small lapel pin, a maple leaf with a faint golden light at the stem. This is the new Maple Light badge. The old one was oversized. From the doorway, Harold called, "Hurry up, cookies are cooling." They stepped outside. The 10-year photo was taken just as the sun kissed the roofline rows of volunteers, former beneficiaries, partners, staff. In the middle, Arya and Zane. The frame captured the sign, the ivy, the banner, "Don't leave anyone behind." As the flash went off, Zane thought he heard it, the faintest sound like the bicycle chain from long ago, now oiled, no longer squeaking. Night fell. People drifted home. Zane locked the doors and turned off each switch one by one. Outside, the sign lit automatically after dusk. He stood under that pool of light a moment longer, pulled the old receipt from his pocket, read the fading blue letters, and slipped it back. Down the road, the bus stop was still there, the rusty sign still swaying. Maybe tonight, someone else would stand lost under the orange glow. Maybe someone else would turn back a new Jayla, a new Zane, and Maple Light would open its door just as it had for 10 years. Zane turned back inside. The Maple Light sign glowed softly, steady, unbroken. He whispered the promise he'd made in the Lemon House. Keep the light on. It wasn't just one person's job anymore. It was the work of a whole system built on discipline and kindness. And when the door clicked shut, the tiny sound felt like a perfect period at the end of a story, one that began at a bus stop and a turning back and is still being written every day. From a warm scarf and a shared cup of cocoa to a white gate wrapped in ivy, the journey of Zane Carter and Arya Layton reminds us. Kindness endures only when anchored by discipline, and "Don't leave anyone behind" will always shine if each of us is willing to turn back at the right moment. If tonight you meet someone lost in the cold, like Arya once was, what will you do? Share your own moment of turning back, or one you wish you had, in the comments below. If this story touched you, like, share, and subscribe with the notification bell on so we can keep telling stories that help us all keep the light on every day.